Hey everybody, today we have the legendary Achieves. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. It's very kind for legend status.
Well, I mean, coming from casting and then going into coaching and just from behind the scenes, seeing the team in the off season versus where they are now and seeing the impact that you have had on that team, uh, it's something that not a lot of people could do. So I have to give you props for that. Uh, I'm sure you saw the replays from before you got there, or at least some of them. Uh,
I mean, there's a little bit of tape. Obviously, it's a
mhm.
big roster move from Toasty to a player like Eris. They're very
Yeah.
very different in what they do on the pitch. So I think most of the first split, I'm willing to give a lot more credit to the players. I think my impact is definitely at least a little bit overblown. They're
Mhm.
all definitely very good. They just needed a little bit of help on pacing and finding the right spots to adjust. And beyond that, they've done a lot of good things themselves, I think. So for me, I've still got a little bit of work to learn about, how to manage things on game day and stuff like that. But uh, so far, I'm glad that they've been playing well, but I think we'll need to see more continued success before I'm willing to give myself any credit.
Yeah. Always humble. So, how did you get into casting? Like, what was your journey into the Rocket League space?
Oh, ancient times at this point, I guess. 2015, I picked up the game just after release, I think.
Hmm.
And then I believe it was 2016 RLCS season one was announced, but right before then, I just started kind of as a joke, broadcasting some of my friends like ESL monthly tournament runs on Sundays on my my old roommate's computer because mine wasn't able to stream.
Hmm.
Having a good time with that. That was a very it was a I was a very horse racy type of caster, as I like to put it. But yeah, I was mostly doing that for a couple of weeks. Somebody watched one of my streams and messaged Cloud Fuel, and that got me involved in Rocket League Central. And then it was, a year and a half of doing Gfinities every day and just reps. And then Rival Series happened in season four, and then away we went after that, I will say.
Yeah. So, what was it that drew you into casting? Because that's
uh, I have a performance background, sort of. I went to college for music education, but we have to be, very comfortable in
mhm.
a public space and, speaking, explaining different concepts to varying uh, demographics of people, young, old, capable, incapable. I felt very confident in front of people and talking about a thought process, essentially.
Mhm.
And I was also a baseball umpire for 10 years, and I'm very comfortable with people not liking what I have to say either. So I kind of developed a bit of a natural
Mhm.
thick skin in that environment. And then just feeling confident enough in myself to get up in front of people, I think, is what kind of drew me to the casting side of things. Uh, Showmanship, not necessarily ever really my thing, but I definitely came to enjoy it for what it was. So now my wonderful full wife says I'm too much of a ham. So it's clearly done me good things.
So, what was your main instrument? You said music education.
I was a singer. Yep,
Ooh,
yep.
there's a lot
I
of
did.
singers in Rocket League, apparently.
There are definitely a few very talented musicians. Wave Punk is definitely, I think, the most capable out of all of us. He finished his degree in music composition, so he's he's very capable.
I
uh,
wonder if there's a correlation between like musicians and like Rocket League, because like you have obviously you have Wavepunk that you just mentioned. You have Turtle.
Turtle
Uh,
Jorby
you
plays a nasty piano.
yeah,
He's pretty good.
Jorby. I mean, I'm an audio engineer, so like that's the other side of it. And then you've got people like Jordan. You've got people like Athena.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know what it is. Do you think it's the analytical mind that once you become a musician and learn like a little bit of music theory, you just get obsessed at
Uh,
over analyzing everything, and that just
maybe
translates? Or
that would be a very interesting field to go down and delve deeper into if that is a common thread amongst people. But I think people in the Rocket League scene, or at least who are content creators, just like making a song like that, especially with today's like software and stuff. Like you can
Mhm.
sample a lot of stuff, and you don't necessarily have to be a fantastic musician to make a good piece of music. Like your ear still knows what sounds good, even if you don't know like how to do it properly, right? Like
Oh
that's not
yeah.
necessarily the most important thing. Like you can still put together something that like sounds good and feels good, and then like you can refine that over time. So like maybe there's something to music analytics and diving deeper into into those spheres that could have some overlap, but there is a surprising amount, I will say. That I've not been aware of so many musically minded people in one space apart from Rocket League, I will say.
Yeah, I think that, speaking of which, what do you think? I don't know. Did you follow the Melee scene at all? Or
I very passively observe like a lot of other esports. Like
Mhm.
if it's like on and I'm doing nothing, like I'll pull it up. But like I've always been super. I enjoy watching like a lot of clips or something. Like I've played a little bit of Melee, like a lot of Smash Brothers in general. But
Mhm.
like I was never a big Wave Dasher, but I loved watching Melee clips.
Yeah.
So like big fan and understand a lot of how a lot of other games work, but not like super dialed into like
Mhm.
specifics, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I was curious, have you seen like the story behind like Respect Your Elders?
No, what is it?
So there was a Chillin' dude is he was like
He's
an
an
up
old
and
school
coming,
guy. Yeah,
yeah, he
yeah,
was like an, I guess you'd say like up and coming Fox player. And this is right around the time that Leffen is becoming known for being
that guy.
Leffen. Uh in good ways and bad. And he releases this diss track and it gets like a million views. And like it's one of the most like iconic gaming music pieces.
Wait,
Uh
Chilling Dude released it or Leffen released it?
Chillin' Dude released it.
Okay, was it
Uh
about Leffen?
yeah, it
Oh,
was
okay,
him
okay, okay.
challenging him to like a money match.
That's
And
great.
like they meet each other in grand finals and he gets swept. But it's
Mm.
become such an iconic part of like Smash Melee culture that anytime he's there, they'll put it on and he'll like perform it on stage,
Of
like
course, you
just
got to
because
do it.
it's so iconic.
That's fantastic.
So
That's a fun tidbit of every event, I think, for people.
yeah, I feel like we need somebody to do that in Rocket League. Like
Live event musical performance and just the interconnectedness of it all would be a great time for sure.
yeah, like I think even if it's done like playfully, like imagine if Vatira and Zen like had like a diss track battle, like and then they meet in grand finals or something like that. Like like I
If
feel like there's
you
that extra level of like drama and animosity that I don't know. I feel like Rocket League's kind of too clean.
it's it's always definitely been, at least at the top level, fairly
Yeah,
like low key, which I don't like hate,
yeah,
like because now that I'm, 29 years old and I watch COD players and like
hmm,
they stand up and just shout at each other all the time, like it's funny the first like 5 times I see it,
yeah,
but like I don't, I'm kind of over it by then. So
yeah,
I kind of like that it's a lot more like, hey man, we're here to compete. Good game. We'll see you later. And
yeah.
I'm totally okay with that. That doesn't bother me. But I know what you mean. Like there's not a whole lot of substantial beef in the Rocket League scene. There's definitely, there's spats that
Hmm.
pop up here and there, but it's definitely never been anything that's like
Yeah, it's like
just shocking.
yeah, it's one of I think probably one of the most like unique things about Rocket League. Like on that flip side,
It's
just
that E for
because
everyone rating, you know. We
yeah,
gotta be nice.
yeah. So I guess coming from from that professional side of it, uh, what drew you into going into coaching? Like, what made you go, okay, the casting opportunities aren't there right now with this transition? What made you go, you know what, coaching is the next step for me?
Yeah, I still enjoy analyzing Rocket League. I like to sit down, I like to watch tape, I like to look at, what teams are doing, what I think they're doing well, what I think is perhaps a potential weakness, and I see a lot of crossover in the prep work between the two jobs. It's just twisted to be like, okay, I have these three specific pieces, and these three specific pieces need to always find a way to win against the field, right? So I think the draw to coaching felt very natural, just because the overlap in what I feel the prep process for myself would be was very similar. And I guess the confidence that I felt that I could at least do a decent job, if not amazing. So that's mostly all it took for me is like, look, you proved you can go out there, be in front of a camera and say some dumb stuff in front of a bunch of people, and you got through it just fine. You can do the
Mhm.
same thing in coaching.
Yeah, an audience of three.
Yeah, exactly. Much more low pressure. And it's nice too because players like Farah who have gone on to be a coach, I remember in some of their interviews, they're like, man, it's the hardest thing to have to sit there and like not be able to do anything and just watch them try and do it. And for me, I don't have any of that because I have never been that good at this game and I will never be that good at this game. But boy, do I think I can tell you how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the like the more unique things about Rocket League is like to a certain extent it's like probability based.
Kinda. Yeah.
Um it, like I think when it comes to like real sports like it's very much like hockey.
Yeah, in the terms of how, you know, everyone kind of covers the pitch
Mhm.
collectively, you only have the only real difference is hockey has that dedicated goalie, right? That's
Yeah.
that's kind of the only difference. And definitely tweaks how you can approach offense. Um, but I know what you mean, like sort of similar with soccer in the same vein, like it is becoming very, very difficult to score goals. Like
Yeah.
defense has leveled up very, very high, and you have to be so good
Mhm.
to break people down and find a way through. So I don't know what hockey did or if they did anything to like encourage more scoring, but that's
So I actually have an interesting theory about that. I think the way Rocket League played actually changed the way hockey got played at the NHL level.
now this sounds like a fantastic YouTube video essay idea.
So, probably I wouldn't necessarily. It's definitely a stretch. Uh, but if you look at the Boston Bruins, in which I am a huge fan of, they started doing something called motion offense in the NHL, where
Okay,
instead of having the defenseman dedicated to the back line, your camera froze.
hang on. There we go.
Okay, you're back. Uh, but instead of having the defensemen, the two guys like in the back or their third men, so to speak,
Hmm.
they would push them up into like the field, or basically like up on the ice, and it's eerily similar to like early Rocket League rotations.
Oh yeah, you see that third man creep up and
Yeah, like
try
it's
and
like
squeeze a little bit.
yeah, it was really interesting to watch like that development. So like that definitely like has played a part in like how I see the game. Just being a lifelong Bruins fan and seeing that third man, so to speak, like push up at the right times.
It's all timing, especially
Yeah.
in a game like pretty much any professional sport, but in Rocket League especially, where your biggest X factor is boost, like
Hmm.
that's the biggest timing like effector in the entire game. And like I'm a huge believer that, Rocket League is not there yet. Like we just don't I don't think we have enough analytical tools to like
Hmm.
really consider how to play a system approach to like an offense, if that makes sense. Like you can't really structure anything yet because we just don't have enough data sets. Like we don't
Yeah.
have enough ability to separate out different plots of data and compare them all like collectively
Hmm.
yet. But I am a huge believer that like exo whiteboard stuff can become like super doable because you think about
Hmm.
any sporting aspect of any traditional sport, like
Yeah.
no playbook for anybody started off 30 pages thick,
Hmm.
right? It all started off with like six things for each team and they were all the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And Rocket League, I think, has the ability to get there. And I've considered, like, man, if RLCS went to 4v4 with dedicated goalie, you can probably get there a lot faster.
Yeah. It's funny
But,
that you say that because that's actually how I got my job at M80 is doing like it taking that approach.
oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So have you heard any bit of my story before or
No, no, please
uh
elaborate.
so I didn't have the analytical tools, but being in the music industry and having it disappear for a year, I had a lot of time to like break down Rocket League and like try and approach it from that systematic way. And so I spent about like 3,000 hours like plotting different formations and
Hmm.
like progresses and just like, okay, like this works a significant amount of time. And then I'm like, this fails a significant amount of time,
Don't do
but
this.
everybody does it for some reason.
Yep.
And then I go and I look at like the coaching philosophy or like the philosophy behind that, and I'm like, all right, this is true, but just not here. And then like that's what's kind of helped bring it uh, into that, and that's something that I'm trying to do as a coach, and also what I'm trying to figure out how to do as a content creator, because I feel like we need that common language in coaching, in
Standardized.
analytics.
Yeah,
But at the
yeah,
same time, I
because
don't want to be like, "Hey guys, here's my playbook."
here's
So,
how you do it. Yeah.
yeah,
It's definitely a very thorny bush to try and untangle or get through for sure. But I the only reason I think Rocket League could get there is because like you think about what is the only other significantly statistically relevant driver of quote unquote tactics across the entire world.
hmm,
It's the military,
yeah,
right? That's the only other place where we have dedicated significant portions of time to considering how to move people to accomplish objectives, very much like sports. And strategy, across anything where there's an objective and you have manpower that needs to be met. I love the quote from like a military tactics video that broke down. It's like strategy breaks down into three parts: time, force, and space.
hmm,
And if at its core components, if you can sacrifice one of these, time, force, or space to achieve a significant advantage in the other one, you will very likely achieve your objective. And I'm
yeah,
like, that's brilliant. And like just those like three bullet points helped me a lot in focusing like thought process. Like, okay, we look for situations, where we can achieve this by doing this, and
hmm,
that gives us bonuses here, which does this, right?
yeah,
So that's like a very fascinating like crossover that I like to try and look at.
yeah.
But
That's the thing that like I think that approach is still novel in Rocket League. I think, especially in North America.
how do
Uh,
you mean?
so it's been very much the play best case scenario, play worst case scenario all the time. Like, and that's how you That's how you play
Yeah,
Rocket
you
League.
defend the primary option, and
Mhm.
if they fake it and go back post, it is what it is,
Yeah.
right?
Like versus this, okay, how do we know that this is like going to happen this percentage of time and this is going to happen this percentage of time. So how do we cover the largest percentage that's actually going to happen? And I think
It's like
that's
baseball. It's
yeah.
like playing defense in baseball. It's like, look, if like imagine we had a shooting graph of,
Hmm.
let's just pick a player, J Naps.
Yeah.
Let's say J Naps scores 75% of the time from the right wall,
Hmm.
like 3 quarters up the pitch. Like, let's
Yeah.
say we had a shooting graph,
Yeah.
and but we don't, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you had that scouting report and be like, look, J Naps puts in, 6 out of 10 shots
Hmm.
from the right side wall, and they all go back post.
Hmm.
And you could just tell your players, look, if JNABS is on the right wall, camp back post.
Yep.
But we can't do that yet.
Yeah. I think also like ooh, it gets into like the psychology perspective too. Of like yes, in like certain scenarios, like most of the time, like if you're pushing up on a player and they're low boost, like and it's like headed towards their backboard, like they're just gonna clear it. Like they know they can't
Oh,
solo
yeah.
play out. It's like they're just gonna clear it and stuff like that. But if you don't send that person forward to pressure, they're like, oh, they're all on the other side of the field. Thanks for the ball.
And then they
But
just hold it.
and then they just sold it, yeah. And so it's like statistically, yeah, like that ball is gonna get boomed. But the psychology
But
aspect of it,
positionally,
like there's all these like psychological things to consider as well.
it's also worth being able to look at your own players, because
Hmm.
you have to look at your own players and be like, look, okay, my guy, like, for whatever reason, struggles to, catch a ball on the backboard and
Hmm.
bring it smoothly down. And if
Yeah.
you don't have that clean control, you have to be able to look at it and be like, look, do not hold the ball in this situation. I don't
Hmm.
care what you do, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
I would rather you get rid of it than try and hold it, because you can't hold it in this situation. Which is,
Hmm.
it's not an indictment of
Yeah.
anybody's ability. It's just positionally for your team, we're gonna get more if you rip it,
Yeah.
right? And so there's kind of that delicate balancing act. And Rocket League, like, psychologically, I'm trying to figure out what you mean by psychological aspect of, like, holding the ball in that situation, because uh,
More so like if you hand the ball to Daniel, like nine
mm,
times out of 10, he's going to air dribble it.
he's
And
going to do something with it.
yeah. Uh, but like if you look at what he's going to do, you know, I'd say probably somewhere around like 80 to 90%. If he has space, he's air dribbling it.
Yeah, he buys
Uh,
a lot of time, and he's very, very good at that.
yeah. But it- that 2 out of 10 times that he doesn't, if he has like boost in space and he does that like ground dribble play that he does, uh, then there's a psychological reason why he does that. There's it's something in his mind that goes, okay, taking it in the air hasn't worked enough,
Hmm.
so I'm gonna take this on the ground. And so there can be a level of conditioning.
Gamesmanship.
Yeah, and this is where like the fine line between making an adaptation and being conditioned. So it's one thing if we bang it backboard all the time, so you sit on the backboard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But but what if we want you to go to the backboard so we can pass it back post?
Yeah, I mean,
And that's what I mean by the psychology of it
I
is
got you. I got you. Because, yeah, if you, like, as a team collectively, like, look, we attack this way. This is how we do it,
mhm,
and here's how we break people down.
yeah,
And you just have to get your players to recognize, okay, once they do that, once
mhm,
they stop that, here's how we go
yeah,
next, right?
yeah. And so it becomes that's where I think the real coaching and like analytical perspective is going to start coming in is how far deep into the playbook do you go, so to speak, and are the adaptations that you're going to make like going to get read, and are you properly adapting to what the team is doing, or are you falling into their conditioning?
Interesting. It's that is a I think if I went for me personally, if I tried to go down that rabbit hole too deeply,
Hmm.
I would get stuck in the weeds.
Oh yeah.
Like
It,
I'd be like, "Oh yeah, they're defending everything off the backboard. So now if we just drive the ball into the corners and like I'd try and wrap my head
mhm.
around something and be like, nah, 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 nah. It would
Yeah.
just get too convoluted too quickly for me, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's where like there's a certain level where like you can make things like too complicated to where your players are thinking, and then that quarter second of thinking it makes
Ah.
the play too slow to happen to begin with.
And you'll miss like open nets or something because of it
Yeah,
too. Because it's just like just too much like active thought. It's like, no, just they just made a bad clear. Just hit it on target. I
yeah,
don't care if it goes in. Just shoot the ball.
yeah, yeah. So like
It's a
that's where I think the fun part of like just looking at the potential future of Rocket League and like where this is eventually going to go now that this stuff is starting to happen. Now there are these analytical minds that even though we may not necessarily have the tools yet, we're
they're thinking
we're
about how to
thinking
get
about
there.
how to get there.
Yeah,
When-
I'm totally with you there because there's I think a wonderful discrepancy at the moment between North America and Europe. Like I am never a believer in the NA versus EU thing. I'm like, nope, we're gonna get rolled. Like
Mhm,
and I think there's a very specific reason for why we're getting rolled, and it's because they work hard, they sit down, they talk with each other, be like, here's what I like to do, here's where I feel like I do my best work,
mhm,
and here's how I interact with you guys, and they very much I feel can really dial in what any three players they put together on a team. Here's how we maximize our three skill sets. And is that necessarily adjusting or compensating for their opponents? I'm not so sure, but I think that in Europe, they're very, very good at sitting down, talking with each other, and saying, here's how we like to play the game. Like, I, as an individual, play it this way, and here's what I like to do. And then we're going to understand, okay, in these spots,
mhm.
we like this player or that player, or we understand where they're going to be a lot more intuitively,
Yeah.
and they find their own play style very very quickly, which maximizes their time together to reach the ceiling as soon as possible, or perhaps go beyond it if there is
Mhm.
one, right?
Yeah.
And North America, it just takes too long for us to get there still, I think, because I think we're so stuck in playing the structure of
Mhm.
teams and not the situation on the field.
Yeah, like I feel like and this isn't a shot at like any team like specifically, like but just something that I've noticed all the way up here uh and all the way down through like rank B is the mentality seems to be hope they miss their shots and
I
us
hope they miss.
counterattack,
Which
which it works up to a certain point. And even if you catch a good team on a bad day, like you can still win it that way.
yeah,
But
definitely.
we are not as a region going to be able to compete with Europe if we don't
Yeah, you
push
gotta take it
ourselves
from
forward.
them. You
Yeah,
gotta take it from them.
like I
They
feel
ain't gonna
like
give it to us.
yeah, like that any like way of playing, for lack of a better phrase, like I feel like that has a peak of like 80%. Like if you play your absolute best, like if there is theoretical perfect Rocket League at 100%, like that idea is just capped at like 80%.
It goes a long way,
And
right?
teams need to be willing to lower their floor a little bit to expand their ceiling a little bit and learn to play the other 95% of the field
we
if
got.
we want to be able to compete with Europe.
I think a lot of it is off ball stuff.
Yeah, I would
Just because
100% agree with that.
on ball, everybody I think across the board is fairly mechanically confident.
Yeah.
But a lot of think about it even from a pure arbitrary number standpoint. If there's
Hmm.
three players, we can logically assume that you're on the ball 33% of the time. That means 66% of the time you are driving around the pitch doing nothing.
Hmm.
You need to figure out how to maximize that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that I noticed this season is like the teams that are going are ones that are going to Copenhagen for the most part have started to break that mold. And the teams that haven't gotten there either are on that path, like I would say that both of our teams are, where we're breaking that mold. And for the most part, like consistent top eight. I think if we don't mess up against Omelet, you guys get top eight. Sorry about that.
It is what it is.
But
I
even
think I
then,
definitely let my team down on Friday. Well,
yeah. But either way, with that, like very consistent. Like at the very least, top eight for sure at teams. It's like those are the teams that are like consistently getting there. Are the teams that we haven't quite gotten our floor up to where it needs to be yet, but it's because we've taken that risk to expand our ceiling. And I think personally, like for us, like we've at least shown that our ceiling can be good enough to compete.
it's the hard part.
Yeah,
Is I'm
willing
not
to
sure
think
how
long
much.
term.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much onus of that
Hmm.
really lays on a coach, if that makes sense. And
Hmm.
mostly because I think in 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 my scenario, I'm pirates on a boat. I think I can accurately assess if you know well, maybe not even just pirates on a boat. I feel very confident in my personal ability to evaluate if a team has what I would say potential,
Hmm.
right? Just because I've seen a bunch of car soccer. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of good teams. I've seen a lot of bad teams. And I think a coach, at least from my own point of view, it's like, okay, if I can see a world where, let's say, top fours are a regularity, at least top eights contending for top spots in your region. If you can at least see that potential, then you are definitely going to be able to understand how to get them there.
Yeah.
And what the players do with the information you give them to get them there, I think is where the the magic
Yeah.
comes from, right? Because it's like I can do so much. I can say,
Hmm.
here's what I see from this team. Take it or leave it. If it helps you, it helps you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Or try this. If it helps, it is what it is. But you can only hope that as a
Yeah.
coach, the advice you've given
Hmm.
is, if not correct, at least not totally useless.
Yeah.
And a lot of players, I think, in Rocket League specifically, since it skews so young,
Hmm.
is such a interesting path to try and navigate, because now you have the expectation of you're 15, 16 years old, you're in high school, and you have to be a professional at the top level of Rocket League. You've got to play a lot of Rocket League.
Yeah.
You have to have the mental fortitude to sit here, grind the game, and drill the basics, practice your shooting mechanics. It doesn't matter if where
Hmm.
power is generated from, but if you're not practicing it, you're not going to be able to do it automatically. And you have to have this insane drive as a player to say, "Yep, I'm going to sit down in free play or custom training for 6 hours today and drill my setups
Yeah.
and practice
The
practice the
boring
most
stuff.
mundane, boring crap
Yeah.
to go out and get the job done." And then I have this bozo telling me what JNaps is gonna do with the ball,
Hmm.
and you have to contend with all of this information, and and that, I think, is the true value of coaching in Rocket League. Is hopefully you are enough of a people minded person to be able to, one, accurately assess strengths and weaknesses for
Hmm.
your and their team. But more importantly, you have to find a way to address each player in a way that will benefit them. Because if your players, such as in my case, are significantly better than me at the game, I'm not going to be able to tell them how to play Rocket League better, right?
Yeah.
I can only say, like, all right, here's what you're doing. And at that point, it becomes a look, I just need to understand you as a person so I know how to talk to you
Hmm.
in a way that is receptive to the way you interpret information, or at least uh, will not be like grating or irritating, right? Like that's the value. You can focus players in specific ways if you understand how to approach them.
Yeah. So you're saying in a job where you're dealing with people, it helps to know how to
You
deal with
gotta be a
people.
people person,
Yeah.
man. Coaching is not just I know car soccer.
Yep.
Coaching is I know car soccer and I know how to tell you about
Yeah.
it.
I think that's one of the more interesting things, like coming forward. Like, I think once we get that established coaching language, because I think it's already starting to happen, like, especially in Europe. Uh, like, now it's no longer this, like, broad first, second, third man that it's so broad that it doesn't necessarily say anything anymore.
Yeah, it's I think it still has its use for
Yeah.
general like
General. Yeah.
identification, like, all right, more often than not, it's that guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously we all know it's not always the case, but when it's that guy.
Yeah. Like, I think that's where the mental shift, I think, is like starting to happen. Uh, and those conversations, because I know from like, I'll have Kev Pert on here next week. Uh, like, that's one of the things, like, looking up to him, like, coming into the scene, like, as an analyst, uh, like, seeing the things that he's done with, like, LG, I'm like, I see exactly what you're doing. And, like, I've come to those same conclusions. You're doing them slightly differently than I would, but uh, obviously he's a human with a brain, so he's going to think at least somewhat differently
As
than
the
me.
old saying goes,
Yeah.
reasonable minds can vary.
Yeah. Uh, and so, like, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, this is like the structure that you're working out of, and like, I see where you're coming from on certain aspects of it. Uh, and like, they're much more structured based. Like, Sathu is, uh, I think, the reason he's been able to be so consistent for so long is like he's already got this kind of mindset. Uh, Genji, uh, as well. I think this season, First Killer has done more to be a teammate than I think he has ever done in his career.
Oh, you have to if you're
Yeah,
gonna
like,
be on a team with Appjack and Nolly. I'm not surprised that he's had to be that way
yeah,
because Appjack is a very, as he said, it's a thinking man's game, and
yeah,
I agree with him. And I think
hmm,
Appjack has enough force of character to sit there and be like, no, this has to happen, and First Killer will be like, oh, okay.
yeah. Like, I think that's like that's honestly like the best I've ever seen him play. Uh, Not just this weekend, but just like this split. Like, seeing him there's a lot of times, like, just from watching him over the years, I'm just like, all right, we can count him to cut Appjack off here. And it's like, oh, he's not.
He waited,
It's like, I'm happy for him, but I'm like, dang it, like,
but
now
now
you're
I'm
harder to beat.
irritated. Now you're playing smarter. I hate
As a
this.
competitor, I'm just like, all right, well, we got to up our game some more. But like, it's really cool seeing him shake that narrative, this split, that he couldn't become a teammate.
Yeah, I don't ever really think uh I'm never one personally to think that a player is doing something wrong just because of how they're playing on the pitch, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Because if I can look at a player's tape and I can justify the thought process for why they did it,
Hmm.
then okay, there's likely another, reason
Hmm.
that they either weren't aware of, or if they had had X information, they would have done something differently. And I'm a big believer that information is the driving force
Oh yeah.
of decision making for Rocket League. So it's like, yeah, maybe First Killer had the rep of, not the most team centric player, but I also think during that time, he was one of the best players on the ball.
Oh yeah.
Like, feed the guy the rock, let him go
Hmm.
to work. Like,
Yep.
if it's gonna work, it's gonna work, right? And if it doesn't, then then you can adjust. But seeing it on Gen G, where he's like, okay, now he's a little bit, bird of prey. I'm
Hmm.
waiting, and then I'm coming, right? Like that. That is its own variation of I'm still doing what I do. It's just picking my spot for a different reason.
Yeah.
And that is good to see that people be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, he could do that." Cuz he always could do that. It's just he perhaps he wasn't on a team where that was viable. Maybe they needed First Killer to be like, "Nope, I got it. I'll hold the ball. Like I can do that." And we will never know without asking, right?
Yeah. I love living by a train. This has become a welcome part of the podcast.
I live by a train too. It's a good time. At least it doesn't wake me up at like 4 in the morning, thankfully, because like it's not that loud,
Hmm.
but you can definitely notice it if like you don't have headphones on. You're like, oh,
Oh yeah.
there goes the train. I
So
would rather live by a train than an airport. I'll say that.
oh yeah. That's I've lived near an airport as well, and that is definitely not fun.
It must have been great on rent though.
Uh,
Oh
somewhat.
no, not even worth it. Oh no.
No, not even worth it. Uh,
Devastating.
so I guess coming into this next split, what is it that you are going to be focusing on? Like, like, are you guys trying to find an org still? Like, are you guys trying to build up socials and
Well, I think
become more attractive for an org? Or
every team obviously wants to get signed. I
Mhm.
don't know how much I am am not or am allowed to say about
Mhm.
that, but I would say like yeah, anybody who's unsigned is going to be looking for an org. Um, like I have never personally been one to like super drive into the world of social media, grow my following, build my brand. It's just not it's not in me. Don't
Mhm.
have that in me. It's too much of a like Rocket League. I love. I loved being a commentator. Awesome job. Wouldn't have changed it for the world. Coaching, very similar. Awesome job. Love it for what it is and how it functions. But if you ask me to like also go like be like marketable on Twitter and
Mhm.
YouTube and stuff like that, I would have come to hate it just because that would have sucked all the joy out of it because I would have to constantly be thinking, oh, it's peak hours in North America. I need to send out a tweet for maxing it. Like, God, no,
Yeah.
I personally can never do that. I would obviously advocate, that generally players should be the ones to build their brands because people will always come to watch a professional player's stream. And Rocket League is not eternal.
Mhm.
You will eventually become an old 29-year-old with bad wrists who can't hit the mechs, man. And when you can just turn on a stream and have 600 people show up because you put in a little bit of work, that's great value.
Yeah.
Uh, but as for what I want to work on, going into the next split, I think if the team stays together, trade window, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I that's its own issue, right?
Mhm.
But let's assume the team stays together. I think for me personally, I noticed, especially this past Friday, like real I have a real deficiency in my own ability to manage a team like on game day. Like when everything is going smoothly, and even if the games are close, like it's no problem. But like this past Friday, we had like a bunch of pause issues. One of our players had some real nasty connectivity problems. Lives in West Coast,
Hmm.
like whole
Oh yeah, we had to find
awful.
5 different servers for our match against TSM.
Yeah, like
It's like kills
miserable.
all pregame speech.
And
It's
like
like,
I think I did a horrible job like keeping my team like, okay, it's all right. Settle down. We're fine. Like I did a very poor job of like refocusing like them and trying to get them back into, all right, it's game day. Let's go do this. So like
hey, you guys
I've
did
got
lock in for that 3 kickoff goal comeback with 47 seconds.
I'm glad it happened, but it ultimately didn't mean anything. And it was good to see that bit of momentum, get started. But then you have, whatever pause issue happens next,
Yeah,
and then it tanks everything.
yeah,
And I think I just did a very poor job as a coach in like keeping players dialed in. So like game day, I need to definitely adjust like what buttons I'm pressing and where I'm trying to focus my energy. Cause like I'm sitting there like doing what I normally do when I cast. I'm trying to watch the game, but like so irritating because I don't have an observer slot, so I can't watch it
oh yeah,
live. So I'm just hearing comms and like trying to piece it together. And like that disjointedness doesn't help me be an effective communicator. And it's like, all right, so I need to completely revamp everything I do when it comes to game day, especially like a Swiss on Friday. It's like I can't sit there and watch the games per se. Friday is not about analyzing what they're doing in the moment. It's look, we're playing the field. We have what we're gonna do. Sitting here to try and prepare for one individual team is gonna be a not a waste of time, but it would be an extreme extreme undertaking to do
oh
every
yeah,
single Swiss stage. So it's about, I need to understand. Look, we have what we're doing. I need to focus on, look, here's what we worked on. Here's what I want you to keep executing on. And now I just need to get you guys going and keep you going. So I need to, that's what I want to work on. I want to get my team locked in. I want to keep them locked in. And when stuff happens, I need to get them back in.
yeah. And I think that's like the struggle for all coaches. Like, because there's only so much, like we talked about at the beginning. It's one thing to have like the perfect strategy, but if you have
Yeah.
to, if you make them think about it for a tenth of a second too long, that's a 50 and not a shot on an open net
Yeah,
because
can
they,
cause some real issues with information overload, choice paralysis.
yeah,
It's tough though, but coaching has been awesome. First split, I don't think I could have asked for much better. Popped on any random team that was willing to take a gamble, and wound up with a team that had a pretty decent shot at making major. So I've really enjoyed split one. I can say
yeah.
that.
I would say with the with the format, if they got seating sorted out, would you think that this format is good at deciding like top four, or do you think
um,
there needs to be like some tweaks somewhere along the way for?
so what do you mean by seeding sorted out? Like seeding through open qualifiers,
Yeah,
or
like just seeding from open qualifiers, like all the way through. Because I feel like that's where most of everybody's complaints are
yeah,
coming from.
I think that's an interesting question. Cause like, yeah, I definitely get it. Like teams that were, top 16 qualifier one, like they don't have to play day one, probably not even day two, to be quite honest. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of value in like, nope, like I don't care. Like you
Hmm.
have to be mentally tough. Go requalify through the open qualifier. Beat the ranked SSL ranked warriors who have nothing to lose and don't care if they make it or not.
Hmm.
Because they're gonna go out there and try and hit a clip on you. And you have to be, mentally strong enough to not crumble under the pressure of
Hmm.
open qualifiers. Because if you're going to crumble under the pressure of open qualifiers, you're going to crumble under the pressure of round five Swiss. You're going to crumble under the pressure of single elimination quarterfinals. You're going to
Hmm.
crumble under the pressure of major grand finals. You will never win anything if you don't have the mental fortitude to make it through open qualifiers.
Hmm.
And that has its own value.
Yeah.
Do I think it can be adjusted? Like, yeah, probably we can have everyone who made top 16 skip day one, give them a
Yeah.
bye. Like,
Hmm.
at the very least,
Yeah.
it's just tedious because, like, yeah, people who make top 16 are definitely like echelon above like
Yeah.
anybody else. Like pros, ranked is not meant for you. You
Hmm.
are already way better at this game. So like, yeah, some tweaks, but is it a good format for determining top four? I think Swiss stage is a great way to get a top eight. Just
Hmm.
because you have to separate the wheat from the chaff,
Yeah.
and Swiss is always an excellent way to do that. I think Swiss is very logical for generating a playoff bracket. And if you have to find a top four teams for a major and that's the way you're going to do it, I'm not going to say it's the worst in the world. It puts a lot of pressure on teams. You
Hmm.
have to be performing. You gotta
Yeah.
win your games. You have to make at least one top four if you want to feel anywhere near confident.
Hmm.
But if you want to be a top four team in the region, go make top fours,
Yeah.
which I can say is at least logical.
Yeah. I think my only issue with it is the points. And then also, I feel like if we're trying to find the best top four teams, I don't feel like single Elam out of Swiss like is the best because
I know what you mean.
SSG, yeah, like SSG, like facing the
It's a
team
tough.
that
It's a
wins
bad
the region,
draw.
like
It's a bad draw. I get it. I'm
it's
with you.
like,
I know exactly what you're saying. But
and that's not to disregard OG or LG
no,
in that
I know
regard.
what you mean.
It's
Like,
just
if you get a bad draw and you run into the powerhouse,
yes,
irritating,
yeah.
frustrating.
And so there's always that kind of question of, well, what if it was double Elam to like, because I feel like single Elam, I think, does a really good job of deciding who the best team is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
but then giving points based off that is like, like there was almost a 6-way tie for fourth place.
Oh,
Like I feel like that in and of itself shows like there needs to be some adjustment to the format.
yeah,
Uh,
you can probably tweak points somehow, but
Yeah.
I've never been like a format
Mhm.
like wizard. That's always been beyond me.
Mhm.
Just because my brain does not operate in that like sphere.
Mhm.
But I definitely understand. Like, if we went to double elim on like playoff bracket, like, yeah, you could do it. But then if we're gonna do that, I would make the case that you should only have six teams make it through Swiss. I would say you want to do double elim, have less teams make the playoffs,
Mhm.
and that I think will put extra pressure on people for sure.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I don't want to sit there and play, 4 matches on Saturday,
Yeah.
right? Just because that would be grueling. Like Swiss in and of itself is Swiss in and of itself is already the hard part.
Oh yeah.
So I think if we went to double elim, I would say cool. Game differentials and let's cut the teams down a little bit if you want to do it that way. At least that's what I would do, just because 8-team double elim will take a lot longer than 6.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think like that's the one thing that I wish like this format would tweak just a little bit, because I think it's not necessarily like the rankings don't necessarily like represent where teams are in relation to each other.
Yeah, no, the points give a terrible indicator
Yeah.
of like
and
of
that's
like what team is performing at what level. Like
Yeah.
that's definitely the yeah, but that's never the point of points.
Yeah.
Points are not an indicator of team's ability.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yep. So like that's the one thing that like I wish the format would figure out for next split is like how to separate that out a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's tough because like I get it. Like moving down major spots to 4 for NA
Hmm.
and EU, like it's hard,
Yeah.
very hard. Like
Well,
you
even
gotta
if
find ways to win in tough
oh
spots,
yeah.
and I can definitely understand the desire for like it because especially if it's pared down to that degree, like
Hmm.
you do want to feel like okay, we did well enough to make top 8, but no one ever likes to be the well we ran into the definite 1 and 2 or
Hmm.
top teams of the region and just got cut short. Like that's never fun.
Yeah.
But I don't. I also am wholly unaware of how feasible it is to like change
Yeah.
formats. Like
Yeah. Like I feel
I
like this was more here's a format, get these amount of teams out of it, good luck,
yeah,
versus let's I feel like it was thrown together versus like reverse engineered. Like in my mind, if
could
you're
have been. I
designing
don't
a
know.
format, it's okay, we want X amount of teams from each region. So how do we decide the best out of those regions? I feel like this was like, hey, copy Fortnite and
Well,
figure out points so that way you'll have a top four in
I will
EU and
say I
NA.
think there's also a logistical aspect you have to consider
Oh
when
yeah.
developing format because like if we had no constraints on time or
Hmm.
production and like compensation of production and stuff like that, I think anybody would make a format that everybody would be happy with.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate reality is, look, the format is also designed around we have
X
time
budget.
slots and we have
Yep.
X budget, we have X amount of time to do it, and this gets it done in those windows. And like, yeah, maybe there's wiggle room to tweak it out here and there, but
Hmm.
like I would say very likely if you ran into double elimination playoff bracket, you're probably at least looking at one extra day.
Hmm.
And, it's logistically it is expensive to run productions for 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 one day
Hmm.
in any capacity. So there's always a lot more that goes into it, unfortunately, than we as competitors would like to see.
Yeah.
Because we as competitors believe in the purest form of finding, nope, these are the best,
Hmm.
not here's how we got these teams.
Yeah. But I guess before we wrap up here, uh, what do you think like your biggest learning experience so far is as a caster and then as a coach so far?
I think I think for me it's actually the same for both. And I think the only reason I can give this answer is because somebody, you know, a lot of people used to message or probably still do message a lot of, broadcast people and be like, "Hey, like looking for advice. How do I do XYZ? How do I become, I love what you do. I want to do it, blah blah blah." All that stuff. Like that's great. And I think the only piece of advice or the thing that stuck with me the most is like, because sometimes like I'd think about it, it's like, man, what do people even like about my casting? Why do people say Achieves is the goat? Like why? And the only answer I've ever been able to come up with is because I care about car soccer. Like I care about what I'm doing. I care about this game. I care about what's happening. And if you want to be good or great at something, you have to care about it. You have to care about what is happening on the screen and you have to care about, you know, presenting whatever it is your role is to the best of your ability at that time, at every given moment. And a lot of people, I think, latched on to my style of casting because they could tell I was enjoying myself. You could tell I loved car soccer. You can hear, what do people say, the smile when someone's talking, right? You can hear it in the way they speak. Be like, oh, that guy's into it, right? And that's been my biggest takeaway, I think, from casting and coaching, is because to me they're not different. If I want to be a great coach, I have to care about this team. I have to care about their success. And once I admit that I care about that, I will sit down. I will find the time. I will watch the tape. I will dedicate whatever I have to see that team be successful.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter what the requirement of that is. If it means I have to take 6 hours on Sunday night to watch tape from what I lost to figure out what went wrong, if I care, I will do it.
Hmm.
Right? So that I think has been the biggest, learning thing for me, is like, no, you have to care. You can't take a day off or slack off just because you've made it. You've got to care if you want to do something and do it right. And it's doubly true, I think, for coaching than it is for casting, because I can be having an off day in the booth and I can get carried by wave punk, right?
Hmm.
But if I'm having a bad day in the coaching box, like, oh boy, now the team is gonna struggle because I'm not doing my best work, right? So with care comes confidence,
Hmm.
and with confidence comes, and I think it leads into good play. Good play breeds good play from your teammates,
Hmm.
and that's how you become great. You want to bring out the best in everybody around you, regardless of what your role is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this life lessons with achieves moment. Uh, is there, I guess, is there anything that you want to bring up or you want to talk about that we haven't discussed, Rocket League related or music related, or I don't know, maybe there's some other random topic that you wanted to talk about?
Just out of curiosity, what do you do for fun, JC? What is something I would love to
Oh,
hear? Something you love. What do you enjoy? What sparks passion in you?
and studying like lyrical patterns in like rap, believe it or
Like
not.
syllabic breakdowns?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
Uh,
I'd love to hear this story.
so for me, like just growing up being that like kind of hyper analytical person,
Uh-huh.
uh, there was also like a part of me that just like emotions didn't make sense to me, like
Sure.
as a kid growing up. And so I was just like, okay, like I think like the really like defining moment for me when it came to like finding that passion was what is it? Wuthering Heights, like one of those old English books that we all had to read
Oh,
in high
okay. Yeah,
school,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
where they're like, oh, like this is an allegory for like all these things going on. I'm just like, why don't you just say this is what's going on? And then you're getting into like the history of just like, oh, well, if they said that, they would get killed by the king. And so they had to come up with a
Oh.
creative way to say that. And so then I was just like, okay, like, and that began like my appreciation for like art in general. And this is right around like the time Adrenaline Rush came out from Twista. And
Adrenaline.
this is Death Before Dishonor is a instant classic. And really starting to like get this story of just like, okay, like not just like the rhythm and the rhyme of it, but like the context behind where all this came from, and just like beginning to understand people that have different backgrounds and how that plays into art. And so it just started with rap and then expanded into all other styles of music.
That's amazing. I love that Adrenaline Rush by Twista says, yep.
Hmm.
That's great though, because I totally get what you mean. because like there is something delightful about the music world
Hmm.
that everybody gets to take their own thing away, like
Hmm.
no matter what the music is, no matter what the artist intended or why they wrote it, everybody relates to each piece of music in a very different and
Hmm.
personal way, which is wonderful. And like I'm totally with you. I love like looking up like, yo, why did this artist write this song? Like what was going
Hmm.
on? Did they have an interview about it? Cuz it's fun. Cuz you get to learn a lot more about like what is that person. They're no longer Twista, right?
Hmm.
Now they're whatever their name is. I don't know what
Hmm.
Twista's name. I'm
Yeah.
not pop culturally educated. Be like, "Oh, they're from wherever and they had this type of life growing up, and it adds enriches your experience of that stuff, so that's awesome.
Yeah. It's just like anytime like you get to like a point where like I don't understand like why this is important, but they put it in there. And like when you get to like artists that are like, especially like when they're starting their careers and like it's not about the commercial success
Yeah, it's
that's
always the
being
most
pushed by
raw.
uh, as a I'm trying to think of the word that he used, but like the commercialized version of it. But like when you get to like that art, and you get to those points in like the lyrics or like the musical choice of like why they did that, uh you're like, okay, like that makes no sense to me. And then you study a little bit deeper and you're like, oh, like this is a reference to like this thing happening. This is this double entendre.
Yeah,
Like
it's like
this.
you're really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's cool that
So
lyrical analysis of rap music.
yeah, well, it's not just rap music. That's just like
Well, I
where
know
it
what you mean,
started.
but like
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great like it's a good segue into that, like, because I totally get that. That's cool, man. That's awesome. Now
Yeah.
I have to go watch a fun syllabic breakdown of I don't know. Someone will make one about Turtle. There we go. I'll make one about Turtle. I'll
Yeah.
do a syllabic breakdown of one of Turtle's songs. There we
Yeah. Let's hear it.
go.
Well, hey,
But anyway,
it was great meeting you. Great having conversation with you. I think we covered a lot of fun topics here today.
yeah, it's been awesome to be on. Thank you for having me, JC. I hope you have much success with M80 going forward, and I'll see you next split if I come back, I
All right, yeah.
guess.
Let's meet each other at the World Championship
Hey,
finals. How
there you
about
go.
that?
I like that. A big fan of that. If that's how it shakes out.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, y'all definitely go drop him a like, go follow him on Twitter for the few times he does post. So, all right. Well, hey, y'all have a good one. Definitely drop in comments what you learned, what you liked, what you want to learn more about from guests coming on. Again, like I said, we've got Kev Pert on next week, and we will see y'all